Video here for your Overwatch. Some big news dropped in the new director's take released by Keller. He says, looking ahead into Season 7 and Blizzcon. First subject was the Sombra Rework. The hero keeps the same hacker fantasy that she's always had, but her playstyle is more active and engaged than it was previously. We've seen a lot of different takes on the rework of her new kit online, from dramatically overpowered to dramatically underpowered. But when you look at the data, she's trending in a great direction. Sombra's win rate jumped around 4 to 5%, with it being slightly higher at lower tiers and bottoming out in Masters and above around 46 to 47%. People are also still playing her quite a bit. Something we always observe with reworks or hero releases is a big spike, and then folks go back to their mains, but Sombra looks stickier initially and hasn't been followed by the same drop-off. Perhaps she's become a new main for players. We're mostly happy with where she's at as players get accustomed to her, but we are looking at the effectiveness of EMP and the frequency of her cooldowns. So my take on the Sombra rework: EMP is often ineffective because Sombra players seem to forget how weak the hack effect actually is. EMP just does damage. The 1.5 second of ability lockout is good for like interruption or comboing with another ability, especially another disable, but people still EMP expecting the team to be helpless for multiple seconds, and that's just not how EMP, or hack for that matter, works. It must be comboed with a teammate. So a big tip for you Sombra players: it's much better to even solo EMP a target that you and your teammate can actually kill, as opposed to EMPing 5 alone. Because if your team needs 1 or 2 seconds to even get into that fight, well, the ult is worthless. It also doesn't surprise me that Sombra is so effective at lower tiers, because virus and hack as a auto win button, especially when the awareness of teammates is low, I can see that being quite deadly on a lot of backline characters, where she just pops out and you don't get any peel, no one responds to help you. It's one of the easiest ways to flank a squishy in the game. It starts to fall off a little bit when your support teammates are a bit more aware and peel for you, or when the team doesn't go in too early. Remember, whoever is your defensive support or backliner who's getting bullied by Sombra, take the time to slow down going in, knowing that she's going to permanently invis flank them, and that's kind of a free kill waiting to be punished, which is why I'm also not surprised that she doesn't necessarily have a high win rate outside of the lower ranks. Her new mobility is so limited that I find it incredibly easy, as most characters that I play, to stalk the Sombra, not let her get away. Basically, any character with mobility can hunt her down as she tries to escape, I feel. That all being said, my buddy Samito has like a 70% win rate as Sombra this season so far, and the way he's described his playstyle is like Doomfist from Overwatch 1, a character with high burst damage and with quick get in and get out tactics, oftentimes getting traded out, but still confirming kills and doing your job, so to speak. Next subject. Aaron says, we're happy with the overall state of balance in Season 7, but let's get into a little more detail based off our stats and community feedback. We've had a lot of talk about supports and their rising power level in the meta. We're making a series of changes to many of the support heroes in the game for the mid-season patch, with the intent of targeting their utility and opening up windows of vulnerability. We want to be careful here in order to avoid some of the feelings of helplessness that supports had at launch, but we want to lower some of the overall sustain and survivability that's present in the game currently. We're also seeing a lot of talk around Orisa, Zarya, and Bastion. From a stats perspective, Orisa isn't one of our top performing tanks. That spot goes to Reinhardt at lower skill tiers and Sigma at the high end. This could be one of those cases where she feels frustrating to play against, but isn't giving the same value to her team. We made a small tweak to her at the start of Season 7, and we're currently in a wait and see with her. We're also planning a slight nerf to Bastion's Assault form for the mid-season patch. The mid-season balance patch will include the changes to support and a few others, and will be roughly comparable in size to the balance patch at the start of Season 7. We'll be able to get into that in more detail in the next few weeks as we get closer to release. All right, a lot of subjects discussed there. I'm going to talk about them in reverse order. Bastion, way too strong, but the thing that they're not mentioning here at all is that they made more support heroes viable in the meta at the same time as buffing a character who needs extra peel. That conversation ripples off into the rest of the game, and there's so many options now that are effective and have overlap that a very important aspect of the game kind of loses its value. You see, in the DPS category, the characters are so skill dependent that it's unlikely that a player has a wide range of DPS heroes in their skill set. because they play so differently. Some of that happens with support players too, but now that you have a Brig or a Lifeweaver who both can play that protection role, Ana, Bap, Zen, and Allari have all these different skill shots. The role overall became more playable thanks to the new options becoming viable or even, existing. In the beta, when we were complaining about supports not feeling that great to play, and by the way, I wasn't necessarily one of these people because I just play Lucio during that time. It was a great time, but that again is like a niche hero not a lot of players know how to play. And another one you can add to the list as options to like help the team without necessarily needing to have great aim. Well, now that you got all these other playstyles that are really useful to the team, the likelihood you're going to get some support teammates that can't really deal with the situation just doesn't happen. And that's putting balance aside, just looking at what's available on the hero roster. Like there was no Lifeweaver when Junker Queen came out. She full ints to go run over a squishy, well just pull that target out, and now she just whiffs her entire engage, her big cooldown she needed to kill out of, doesn't get one, and just looking kind of silly. I think like Doomfist dives look similar when you outplay it with Lifeweaver. There's like so many things in the game where you either can fight it yourself as Kiriko or save a teammate from the support position just from the playstyle. And since I thought Bastion was already a low-key sleeper hero, teamwork heroes that need resources got a buff just by the hero releases coming out. But because supports got so much of that flexibility, it was hard for a lot of tank heroes to punish them, especially when there's a Bastion at their side ready to mow the tank down. Something they don't mention about Orisa here is Orisa in specific matchups. I'm always concerned about that. It's kind of hard to ask a question like, what's the statistical likelihood that you're going to lose on Winston, and how much easier of a time would you just have switching to Orisa? Now, is Orisa's global win rate necessarily better or worse than Winston's? Well, Winston's a hero you swap off of, and Orisa is a hero you swap to, because you're already getting rolled likely. Then on top of that, there's players that only play Orisa. I realize this is a bit of a try-hard, sweaty point of view on this, but I think a lot of ranked players have that mentality that they realize, well, you got to counterpick in this game or you're going to have a horrible time. One tricking on tank is very difficult to do and everyone will hate you. So while they do exist, these heroes that are more durable to be like the last resort at the end of the line, the tank that you'll swap to in a losing game, versus these execution win more type picks like Winston, who are easily countered, and it's very difficult to stay on that pick the entire game since, again, there's so many different options from both damage and support to deal with you. And he, I would consider, is a good tank. It's just all tanks are counterable if they really want to. I really think they shouldn't look at the performance of any hero until they change how supports function. I'd like for them to choose what kind of personality they expect the role to have, because prior to the really effective defensive supports being released, support was like, you gotta have offense in order to compete. You're gonna need to fight back. There's no hope. Hit your shots and hopefully get some limbs before you get traded out. That's how support felt like. But now you can choose to opt out of that type of game, and a lot of the offensive support still exists. So they're both dealing a lot of offense and adding a lot of defense. So specifically, they say they're targeting their utility and opening up windows of vulnerability. I'm willing to bet Lifeweaver is going to get tuned down a bit. That was a very specialist type hero who, granted, yes, was understated at the start, but also underdeveloped from the community. A huge issue I take with the way Blizzard's been balancing Overwatch 2 is that we don't expect the community to need to learn anything. They don't have to master it, right? There's no time to like figure out, well, Bastion and Lifeweaver can work well together, something I saw coming. Instead, Allari comes out, very effective, and they buff Lifeweaver and they buff Bastion all at the same time. And then you get the turret meta of last season. But then on top of that, I think players also got better at playing Lifeweaver, learning how to use the pedal as your own personal shield and getaway, which by the way has almost no downtime. You can stay up on that thing for basically forever because it only will be a few seconds from after it fully times out before you have another one. Talk about not really having a window of exploitability. Another one I would say is Allari's heal pylon is kind of ridiculous in that it never times out, has too much HP, so it can be in the fight churning away healing while both supports are dead. That's just kind of ridiculous. Compare that to Ana, who's got like double-digit second cooldowns, which are the entirety of the power of her character. I mean, it's worth it, right? But now that we have these defensive heroes to protect a character like that, we don't also need them all to have high stats, because it pretty much means tank really can't outplay anything, DPS struggle to also duel a support, and supports can kind of do everything out there. I do want to note and emphasize, I enjoyed playing support at launch, and I also enjoy all the supports they've added, even the broken ones. I like the broken mechanics. Yes, more crazy support utility in the game would be great. Keep doing that. but I just think there shouldn't also be like high stats on everything. They finally got Kiriko to be tuned back where her win rate isn't so high at the vast majority of skill tiers. People still complain about her like she's in every game. Meanwhile, these other supports are way better. The community is always going to complain about support heroes denying value, but that's what they're built to do, in my opinion. But they should also be exploitable and need to actually execute their plays. I actually really look forward to how the game might play if they tune the right things. And I think instead of Blizzard trying to overstat support because it's a very punishing role when the game is balanced, I think instead us as a community should demand that we get better at Overwatch. And what I mean is, the thing that annoys me the most about playing support is when I want to play in a good position where I won't be exploited, but my team is determined to fight in bad positions for both them and me, meaning it's hard for me to heal them, and that causes like a ripple effect in the game. And I know lots of support players feel that way, which is why it's nice to have characters like Kiriko, who can play anywhere, or Lifeweaver, who can tell their tank to literally stand in front of me. That's my favorite thing. Tanks seem to think that making space is contesting air, being forward on the map, not marking an enemy and letting the enemy come flank the support. When you get more value actually just stacking on your support, just stand in front of them most of the game and get pocketed. It's great. Like, that's what playing tank is in Overwatch 2 a lot of the time, especially if you're playing with Batiste. But anyway, I'm excited to see the number values go down about to the level they were closer to launch, but now with like Brig 2.0 with the rework and all these extra heroes to offer a lot of flexibility for the role. I don't think they're missing a playstyle. Whereas at the launch of the game, I was scratching my head like, if your team doesn't regroup, you're just kind of screwed. You could get spawn killed forever. But now, even if your team plays like chickens with their heads cut off, you've got a lot of options. Next section of the blog post, I'm actually really excited to talk about this subject. He says, Halloween Terror has always been the most popular event in Overwatch, and this year is no exception. We released a totally new game mode in Season 7 with the Trials of Sanctuary. It's one of the first times we've given players the ability to gain power, as well as new abilities over the course of the game. We love the mode, and it looks like players do. On the first day of the season, over 35% of all player hours were spent in our Halloween modes. We're talking about what an expanded version of this mode could look like, a way to get even more progression and player choice. I gotta say, this is the best PvE they've added to Overwatch maybe ever. Scaling it up, I think this is a genius idea. What if they started to make an Overwatch 3, where it's a standalone PvE game that's endlessly replayable like Diablo Adventure Mode? I mean, this mini Diablo event was really, really good. Imagine if they made a full RPG game. You know what? I think they should stop releasing heroes and actually work on that game. Otherwise, in the blog post, they talk about a crossover event. We're going full Copy Riot mode, where we get our own Kpop group who will be performing a Overwatch-based Kpop song at BlizzCon. They mentioned here in passing that they have top priorities in looking at the Battle Pass and the competitive system. We'll be detailing the direction of our reworked competitive mode at BlizzCon, which is actually not so far away, guys. However, we'll be talking about a new take on our Battle Pass and shop changes a little later, most likely early next year. Here at the end, he does also address the Moira Skin controversy. Many players were upset that the Moira Lilith Skin, which was not just the best skin of the season so far, but one of the best skins they've ever created. I mean, it looks almost just like Lilith while still being Moira. I mean, it's a must-have skin for sure. Players were not happy that you had to get the ultimate battle pass, $40, which, while yes, since there's multiple legendary skins in it, an entire battle pass, extra currency, there is a lot of cosmetics for $40, I'll say, but there is no way to buy the skin on its own if you don't want all the rest of it, which of course is similar to their strategy of putting those PvE missions as like a $5 add-on on the previous battle pass. But of course, this is the PR strategy. They try to see what the most greedy version they can get away with so that they can walk it back a bit, so at least enough players give them the benefit of the doubt that they're trying their best. Aw, shucks, guys, we'll let you buy it for $20 separately if you don't want to pay $40. Aren't we so great? An interesting note to remember is that Blizzard did get acquired, Activision Blizzard King, in fact, by Microsoft, who have a very different philosophy to how they are going to run the franchises that they own. They do care about longevity, and while they have messed up at certain points with, like, Halo had similar free-to-play problems where there wasn't really an incentive to keep playing that game and it fell off, but was well received at launch, and they have treated, let's say, legacy franchises a lot better Age of Empires, for example, they treat with tender loving care, so it's kind of expected that maybe StarCraft makes a return in some fledgling form, even though it might not be the highest earner that Activision could have under its belt. Microsoft has a different viewpoint to it because they want to own all the games and put all the games in Game Pass, so they care about quality, actually, usually anyway. So that all being said, if Overwatch is set to be a Game Pass game, they might not necessarily be incentivized to milk every dollar out of the microtransactions and instead just have another option to keep you in the ecosystem of the much larger plan that Xbox has. Because remember, while Blizzard is huge, Xbox is huger. Overwatch and Diablo were used as cash cows to kind of bail out the previous poor decision making of the management of Activision Blizzard for years before. Oh yeah, and then of course the lawsuit and all the other problems, right? Like they put the monetization in front of those games in order to save the company somewhat. And while Xbox and Microsoft haven't necessarily always made the right decisions, they compete in the industry in a different way. The risks they take typically aren't at the full out expense of the player base, and when they are, they at least correct course. Whereas Activision Blizzard tries to figure out how they can double and triple down on their exploitative strategies. All right, guys, that's everything for the blog post and lots of commentary discussing about it. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave it a like and don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos come out. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.